Alright, so you guys absolutely love the transfer portal content on the channel, and we're going to go ahead and start kicking things off, as we're going to talk about who are the current top 15 players in the 2026 transfer portal. Obviously, it doesn't actually begin until January, but today we're going to talk about who the top 15 players are, and what each and every one of them brings to the table. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you can support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about the top 15 players in this year's portal so far. Okay, so number 15 on 24/7 Sports, we have an offensive tackle by the name of Josh Atkins. And going back in time, he ended up coming out of Mansfield Timberview High School in Arlington, Texas, and was barely ranked inside the top 2,000 recruits in the country. He decided to commit to the Houston Cougars, and at 6'4", he would eventually develop while he was there. It seemed he has bounced all over the place, as he did not play in his first 2 years at Houston before starting 13 games at Hawaii in 2023. He then decided to transfer to Arizona State ahead of the 2024 season and help them get to the college football playoff. He once again played for them in 2025 and has now entered the portal. I'm not sure how he has eligibility left, but at maximum, he's got one more year, and I bet a big blue blood school will try to poach him. Coming in at number 14, we have our first quarterback on the list, and I talked about him yesterday in my transfer portal quarterback video, but it's Jaden Craig. He was a 0-star recruit coming out of Montclair, New Jersey, and Craig's only real offer was to Harvard. He ended up playing sparingly his first 2 years there, before taking off as a starter in both 2024 and 2025. Craig has honestly been one of the most exciting players in the FCS over the last 2 years, and will now get a chance to transfer up to the FBS level, as in 2024, he passed for 2,400 yards and 23 touchdowns, and this year, he passed for 2,900 yards and 25 touchdowns. He also scored 11 touchdowns on the ground during his career. He brings 6,000 yards and over 60 touchdowns to the transfer portal, and I guarantee you he's going to end up at a Power 4 school, probably on the East Coast. But let's first hear a word from today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. The college football playoff bracket has now been announced, and the peak of the college football season is now here. So whether you think JMU is going to upset Oregon, or Alabama is going to get its revenge against Oklahoma, Underdog has you covered. If you're new to Underdog like I am, you can use the code FISHER, and you'll get $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5, win or lose. That's FISHER. So here's how it works. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you're in the game. You also have a shot to win up to 5,000 times your money. We still have a bit of time before college football comes back, but we will have Thursday night football coming up here soon. For example, I decided to go higher on Bijan Robinson and lower on Bucky Irving. I also then went lower with Mike Evans and then higher with Emeka Egbuka. But for my college fans, the best part is Underdog is available in nearly every SEC state, like Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. And again, if you want to get in on the action, go ahead and use my code FISHER, and you'll get $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5, win or lose. And thank you to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. The offensive line is crucial in college football nowadays, and the guy coming in at number 13 is Ben Morosky. He is not very well known in the college football world, as he came out of St. Thomas More High School in Connecticut and honestly was a no-name. He did not have any stars in the 24/7 Sports composite, but was listed as a 2-star on 24/7 Sports. His only real offer was UConn in the class of 2022, and over the last couple of years, he has finally blown up and has started. He's 6'7" and 335 pounds, and he has anchored the UConn Huskies the last few seasons, and now he'll probably jump up to a big-time SEC or Big Ten school in my opinion. At number 12, we have Colton Joseph. I've already made it clear, he's my favorite player in this year's transfer portal and my favorite quarterback, and going back in time, Joseph was a 2-star recruit in the class of 2023 and was barely ranked inside the top 2,000 players. He came out of Newport Harbor High School, which is located in California, and he got no offers despite putting up insane numbers. In fact, he had over 4,200 yards and 41 touchdowns as a senior, but the best he could do was Old Dominion. Joseph would start the back part of 2024, passing for 1,700 yards and 11 touchdowns, and running for 647 yards and 11 touchdowns. He improved those numbers in 2025, having an excellent showing against Indiana, and this season he threw for 2,600 yards and 21 scores, with 1,000 yards rushing and 13 touchdowns. In total, he brings 4,200 yards passing and 32 touchdowns, and 1,600 rushing yards and 24 scores. Joseph, in my opinion, is this year's John Mateer, and I know I want him at Indiana, but some are saying that he's going to end up at Tennessee. Ranked right ahead of Joseph, we have our first tight end of the day, and that is Michael Smith. Michael Smith is a 6'6" tight end who comes out of Calvary Day School in Savannah, Georgia. That is a school that always produces a ton of big-time talent, and he was considered the number 10 tight end and the 147th best player in the class of 2024. Michael Smith was a ton of fun to watch, and he ended up catching 28 passes for 638 yards and 11 touchdowns, and the year before, he had 12 touchdowns as a tight end. This guy definitely knew how to score the football, but so far during his time at South Carolina, he's played very sparingly. It seems that South Carolina wastes a lot of their big-time receivers, as Nick Harbor wasn't fully utilized, and in 2 seasons, Smith has 12 catches for 126 yards and a touchdown, and I bet he transfers up to a bigger school and ends up becoming an NFL draft prospect next year. The Texas Longhorns have become a destination for running backs, as they've put a ton of guys into the NFL, like Roschon Johnson, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, and Jaden Blue, and Jarrett Gibson was supposed to be next up. He ended up coming out of IMG Academy and was considered a top 100 recruit in the class of 2024. The number 9 running back would end up going to the Longhorns after 2 successful stops at big-time high schools. Gibson was a backup during the 2024 season, running the ball 78 times for 377 yards and 4 touchdowns, and potentially this year he could have broken out being the second option, but ended up getting buried on the depth chart, running the ball only 37 times for 152 yards and 1 touchdown. Gibson was not much of a factor for the Horns this year and decided to enter the portal, where I guarantee you he goes to another Power 4 program. One school that always sends plenty of talent off to the transfer portal is the Georgia Bulldogs, as their players are always getting poached. Coming in at number 9 so far, we have cornerback Daniel Harris, and going back in time, he went to Gulliver Prep High School in Miami and was considered a blue-chip recruit. At 6'2", he was the number 19 corner in the class of 2023 and chose Georgia over schools like Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. Harris ended up finishing his senior season with 49 tackles, 1 TFL, and 2 interceptions, and also helped return kicks. His brother played defensive end for Texas A&M at one point, but so far, Daniel Harris has not seen much of the field. He had 1 tackle his freshman year before having his best season in 2024, having 22 tackles and 3 pass deflections. In 2025, Harris ended up falling behind, as he only finished with 7 total tackles and did not have a pass deflection. In total, Harris has 30 tackles and 3 pass deflections in 3 years, and will definitely be a big target in the transfer portal, and I think this is a good problem that Georgia has, as there's just so much depth there. Coming in at number 8, we have our first wide receiver on the list, and that is Perry Thompson. He comes out of Foley High School in Alabama, and Thompson was a super fun player, as he was the number 11 wideout in the class of 2024. I believe this is the same guy that flipped from Alabama to Auburn, and while Thompson was in high school, he caught 53 passes for 718 yards and 7 touchdowns as a senior, and that came after 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns as a junior. As I said, he ended up going to Auburn, where so far in 2 seasons, he's been more of a depth piece. He had 5 catches for 126 yards and a touchdown as a freshman, and then this past season had 17 catches for 154 yards without a touchdown. Thompson's got plenty of potential, and he brings 22 catches for 280 yards and a touchdown with him to the portal, and he will definitely end up at another SEC school or a Big Ten program. At number 7, we have our second Texas running back on the list, and this time it's CJ Baxter Jr. I remember when this guy was considered a 5-star recruit and the number 1 running back in the country, and this is while he was at Edgewater High School in Orlando, Florida. Baxter had over 3,800 yards and 57 touchdowns, and over 4,000 all-purpose yards in total. Baxter was supposed to be the next big thing in college football, and actually got a chance to play early at Texas in 2023, running the ball for 659 yards and 5 total touchdowns. He missed the 2024 season due to an injury, and in 2025, he only had 54 carries for 196 yards and did not score. In total, in 2 years, he has 855 yards and 5 touchdowns, and with his former 5-star status and his potential, I think he's going to be a big-time player in this year's portal. Ranked 1 spot ahead of him, we have another running back in Dylan Edwards. You guys probably remember this dude, as he was a big-time recruit coming out of Derby High School in Kansas, and he really flipped around. Originally he had committed to Kansas State, but then flipped to Notre Dame, and then would flip to Colorado because he had played with Coach Prime as a kid. Dylan Edwards blew up immediately at Colorado, having that insane game against TCU, but that was the peak of his career. He had 76 carries for 321 yards and a touchdown before deciding to go back to Kansas State where his dad played, and he reunited with Avery Johnson. As the backup to DJ Giddens, he ran for 546 yards and 5 touchdowns and was supposed to be running back 1 in 2025, but unfortunately, he got hurt in their first game against Ireland. Some say it's because he kicked a bench, and it was sort of a messy year. He He finished with 205 yards and 2 touchdowns, missed a lot of the season, and entered the portal in November, and he even had to give back some of his NIL. He's definitely an interesting story, but because of his talent, he'll be worth the risk to a couple of big-time schools. At number 5, we have a guy who's already made his decision, as Noah McKinney will transfer from Oklahoma State to TCU. He's a 6'4" interior offensive lineman, and going back in time, he came out of Coronado High School in Nevada. He was listed as the 1600 best player in the class of 2022, and originally spent time at UNLV. After redshirting at UNLV, he would eventually transfer up to Oklahoma State, where he played in 18 games between 2023 and 2024, and became an anchor for the Cowboys, despite how horrible they were. McKinney has already made his decision, as he will transfer to TCU, as Sonny Dykes is hoping to make a run at the Big 12 next year. At number 4, we have a recruit who's decided to leave Bill Belichick at North Carolina, and that is linebacker Kamori House. Coming out of St. John Bosco High School in California, House was a pretty big name as he became a top 600 player and would arrive at Washington as part of the class of 2024. While he was at Washington, he became a freshman All-American, as House would end up finishing with 33 total tackles, 4 pass deflections, a forced fumble, and an interception. He decided to transfer over to play for Bill Belichick, and this year he was really good. He ended up finishing with 78 total tackles, 1 pass deflection, a sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. This guy is definitely a disruptive playmaker, and I bet we'll get a huge NIL deal to go to an SEC school. At number 3, we have another quarterback who I talked about yesterday, and that is Kenny Minchey. Coming out of John Paul II High School in Nashville, Minchey was a dual-threat star, and after originally committing to Pitt, he would flip to Notre Dame and became their 2023 quarterback commit. In fact, Minchey was insane to watch, as he had over 5,000 yards and 53 touchdowns during his career. Unfortunately, starting at Notre Dame is quite difficult, as in 2023 they had Sam Hartman, in 2024 they had Riley Leonard, and then this year he lost the starting job to CJ Carr. He ended up having 2 rushing touchdowns during his time at South Bend, and right now he's seen as a dual-threat quarterback with a lot of potential, but there's not much on tape. I still think he ends up going to another Power 4 program and will be highly sought after in the portal. And number 2 in the portal, we have another big-time defensive player, and that is safety Boo Carter. He's one of just 4 4-star transfers right now, according to 24/7 Sports, and going back in time, he went to Bradley Central High School in Tennessee and was considered a top 150 recruit and the number 4 athlete in the class of 2024. Carter ended up being Mr. Football in the state of Tennessee after having 1,800 all-purpose yards and 27 touchdowns, including 55 catches, 12 scores, and then 102 tackles on defense. Carter was pretty much everywhere, and so far through his 2 years at Tennessee, he was solid. He had 38 tackles as a freshman and 25 this year, and also finished with 3 forced fumbles, an interception, 2 sacks, and 3 pass deflections. Unfortunately, Carter was kicked off the team and seemed to get into some trouble at Tennessee, but he will definitely be given a second chance because of how good he is, and I bet he ends up as a top 10 portal player when things are all said and done. And finally, our number 1 player in the portal right now is wide receiver Nick Marsh from Michigan State. Marsh had a couple of insane games back in 2024, but coming out of River Rouge High School in the state of Michigan, he was a 4-star recruit and the number 30 wideout in the class of 2024. Marsh ended up having 41 catches for 718 yards and 8 touchdowns his senior season and would arrive and get early playing time at Michigan State. In fact, he finished with 41 catches for 649 yards and 3 touchdowns and was a freshman All-American. In 2025, he became the best player on the team, finishing with 59 catches for 662 yards and 6 touchdowns. During his 2 years in East Lansing, he had over 100 catches for 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns, and he'll definitely transfer to be wide receiver 1 at another big-time school. But yeah, so far there haven't been that many additions to the portal, but these are the top 15 guys according to 24/7 Sports. But what do you guys think? Where do you think these guys will end up? Who else will enter the portal, and what topic should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.